15 billion miles from the Sun, humanity's farthest outposts are navigating a region of space where starlight is a distant memory, washed in high-energy radiation. Launched in 1977 to take advantage of a once-in-2 centuries planetary alignment, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 have survived nearly 5 decades in the deep dark. But leaving the solar system isn't as simple as crossing a quiet, invisible line on an astronomical map. The edge of our sun's influence is a dynamic, highly textured collision zone, where two distinct plasma regimes engage in a continuous pressure balancing act. At the heliopause, the solar wind is completely halted by the interstellar medium. Before this wall, the wind decelerates from 800 kilometers per second to subsonic speeds, compressing and heating the plasma from 10,000 to 100,000 Kelvin inside the heliosheath. The twin probes were engineered to survive this compression. But as they pierced the final bubble, they entered a domain where the laws of earthly physics began to behave in ways we didn't predict. Once the probes crossed the heliopause, the sun's magnetic field no longer acted as a buffer. The spacecraft were immediately hit by a 30% increase in galactic cosmic ray intensity, high-energy particles accelerated by distant supernovae. The environment immediately outside our solar system is a warm, partially ionized gas cloud with a kinetic temperature of roughly 7,000 Kelvin. This diagram shows the paradox of the void. While the temperature is technically high, the particle density is 40 times higher than the outer heliosphere, yet still so low it would pass for a perfect vacuum on Earth. There are so few particles to collide with the spacecraft that this high-temperature gas cannot transfer its heat. Physically, it is a freezing, invisible fire. Because the vacuum isn't truly empty, the Voyager's instruments are capable of recording the physical texture of the galactic cloud. In May 2021, data from Voyager 1's plasma wave subsystem revealed a persistent, narrow-bandwidth emission between 1 and 2 kilohertz. This steady hum is the sound of thermal density fluctuations within the interstellar medium, a quiet rain of plasma vibrations that never stops. This discovery allowed scientists to map the local density at a spatial resolution of 0.05 astronomical units, revealing turbulent fluctuations in a region we once thought was uniform. But as the probes sailed deeper into this vibrating ocean, the interaction between high-energy radiation and ancient hardware began to corrupt the mission's very logic. Observations through 2025 showed the local magnetic field environment staying stubbornly elevated, contradicting models that predicted a smooth transition into the galactic field. During this physical turbulence, Voyager 1's flight data subsystem, a computer operating with just 69 kilobytes of total memory, began to fail. A repeating, highly structured command string began executing within the subroutines, effectively rewriting how the spacecraft organized its own data. This diagram illustrates the feedback loop engineers discovered. When they sent diagnostic test pulses to debug the system, the spacecraft didn't just return them, it adapted its output to match the pulse, repeating the signal in an altered, self-modifying cycle. Shortly after, Voyager 1 executed an uncommanded attitude correction, aligning its high-gain antenna parallel with the sun's gravitational focal line. Analysis suggests that cosmic rays flipped physical memory gates within the aging hardware. This wasn't a software bug, but a physical restructuring of the system's logic into a closed, self-modifying loop. The radiation environment has effectively turned the spacecraft's decaying architecture into a machine that now reacts to its own internal errors as if they were external commands. Rescuing the mission depends entirely on the speed of light. In late 2026, Voyager 1 will be exactly 1 light day from the Sun. At this distance, it takes 24 hours for a radio signal to reach the antenna, and another 24 for a confirmation to return. This chart shows the power margin. Because the plutonium in the generators decays at a set rate, the spacecraft loses 4 watts of power every year. We are fast approaching the threshold where the heaters will fail and the fuel lines will freeze. Engineers are preparing the Big Bang maneuver, a risky, total reconfiguration of the power system to keep the heaters running into the 2030s. we are in a race against the laws of thermodynamics. If the power fails before we can break the logic loop, Voyager will continue its flight as a silent monument, carrying its data into the interstellar dark without ever being heard again. The bizarre string of code that began self-replicating inside Voyager 1's memory banks in 2024 sparked intense speculation. But returning telemetry data confirms the anomaly was entirely physical. The spacecraft was not receiving an alien signal, nor was its ancient software mysteriously waking up. To understand the malfunction, we have to look at the hardware. Voyager 1 relies on a flight data subsystem with only 69.63 kilobytes of total magnetic core memory. Out past the heliopause, the probe lost the protective magnetic shielding of our Sun. This exposed the probe's extremely limited memory bank to a relentless, unfiltered bombardment of high-energy, relativistic galactic cosmic rays from the interstellar medium. Ground teams ran the telemetry through artificial intelligence models and found that these cosmic rays struck the spacecraft's decaying memory gates. Those high-energy impacts caused literal state flips in the physical hardware, randomly corrupting the command subroutines inside the system, so that they accidentally triggered a continuous, self-modifying feedback loop. What initially mimicked digital autonomy was actually a violent symptom of the local galactic environment. The severe radiation of the very local interstellar medium is actively tearing the aging computer apart at the microscopic level. That degradation extends directly to the power supply. Far beyond the reach of solar panels, the twin probes run entirely on 3 multi-hundred-watt radioisotope thermoelectric generators. These devices convert the heat radiating from the decay of plutonium-238 directly into electricity. This line chart tracks the inescapable reality of that radioactive decay over the lifespan of the mission. Plutonium-238 has a physical half-life of 87.7 years. Because of that constant decay rate, coupled with the slow breakdown of the silicon-germanium thermocouples, each spacecraft permanently loses about 4 watts of electrical output every single year. Following this trajectory to the present day, we see the power margin drops below 225 watts. That intersection with the system failure threshold means there is virtually no safety net left. If the output dips much further, the spacecraft will lack the heat needed to prevent their hydrazine fuel lines from freezing solid, causing an immediate and permanent loss of attitude control. JPL's mission operations have transitioned into a phase of pure energy conservation, where success is measured solely by the prevention of a terminal thermal freeze-out. To keep those core thermal heaters running and prevent the fuel lines from freezing, flight controllers have adopted a brutal triage strategy. They must systematically and permanently kill the spacecraft's remaining sensory organs, freeing up the electrical wattage required to keep the main bus alive. On April 17, 2026, engineers executed the command to shut down Voyager 1's Low-Energy Charged Particles Instrument, or LECP. This ended a 49-year continuous run of mapping the structure of the heliosphere and measuring the density of the interstellar medium. The engineers did leave a tiny 0.5-watt stepper motor attached to the instrument running. Its sole function is to rotate the dead sensor platform 360 degrees, over and over, preventing the gears from seizing in the extreme cold of the galactic vacuum. That half-watt mechanism operates as a lone mechanical heartbeat left running in the dark, a tiny, calculated defiance against the onset of permanent interstellar blindness. Managing these power margins requires immense precision, but engineers face a hard limit dictated by the speed of light. All emergency instructions have to be transmitted through the massive terrestrial antennas of the Deep Space Network. This vector animation illustrates the scale of the communication delay. A radio command travels at nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, but the vast distances mean a signal takes 19.5 hours to reach Voyager 2 and almost 23 hours to hit Voyager 1. It requires nearly 2 full days just to diagnose an anomaly and confirm a response. In November 2026, Voyager 1 will drift past a deeply symbolic threshold, exactly 1 light day away from the Sun. At over 16 billion miles out, a command from Earth will travel for 24 hours through the cosmic dark before touching the spacecraft's antenna. The sheer vastness of space-time has functionally severed our protective tether. At this distance, the spacecraft is completely isolated, relying entirely on decaying automated fault protection systems to survive. When those ancient subroutines finally fail, there is no replacement spacecraft waiting in the wings. Pioneer 10 and 11 lost contact decades ago, and while New Horizons is still active, it is traveling at a significantly slower speed and will never overtake the Voyagers. Aerospace agencies have proposed successors, such as NASA's Interstellar probe and China's Shenzhou missions. However, these are strictly conceptual. Even if they secure heavy lift rockets and perfectly execute massive Jupiter gravity assists, they are decades away from launching. Factoring in the immense transit times required to reach the heliopause, humanity is mathematically locked into a 20 to 30-year era of total sensory deprivation at the edge of the solar system once the Voyager twins fall silent. Current thermal and electrical models project that by 2030, the plutonium decay will completely starve the remaining scientific instruments. By 2036, the electrical power will fall below the absolute minimum required to run the basic radio transmitters. The carrier signals will drop forever. The silent husks will continue to coast outward at over 3 astronomical units per year. In approximately 40,000 years, Voyager 1 will pass within 2 light-years of the dwarf star AC +79 3888, while Voyager 2 will brush past Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky. Bolted to the exterior of each decaying bus is a gold-plated copper phonograph record, carrying the sounds, languages, and music of Earth. These records will likely persist as a silent, physical archive of humanity, remaining intact long after the sun itself has exhausted its nuclear fuel. Thanks for exploring the unknown with us. If you want to journey to the edge of the cosmos every single day, hit subscribe and stay curious, VeraFlux family.